To the UK now, where some very interesting data today. Britain's baby bus laid bare, fertility rate plunges to an all-time low. That all-time low is 1.49. That was in 2022. It slumped even further by now. Now, this is an interesting trend that we're seeing throughout the West. And it's no surprise that just last month, also out of the UK, they had a review showing that less than half of millennials ever intended to have a baby. So it's pretty easy to see how we've ended up here. But the fact that this is something that we're seeing play out across the West, here in Australia, our fertility rate is just 1.72. We haven't been meeting the replacement rate required since the 70s. And then we wonder, why does government have to import so many people? Why does government keep bringing so many immigrants here? If we were just having more babies, we wouldn't be bringing as many. And it's interesting to note how throughout Europe, Douglas Murray wrote about this in his book, The Strange Death of Europe, how so much of it has to do with how many people are or aren't having babies. The fact that Africa's fertility rate is 4.1, Egypt's is 3.1. If you just contrast the Western countries compared to others, the contrast is stark. We're simply not replacing ourselves, which is why, in large part, we're seeing Western nations, the face of them is changing forever, and nothing but a ginormous baby boom could ever change it.
We mentioned Douglas Murray's book, The Strange Death of Europe. Another great book on this is by Mark Stein, who wrote a book some years ago called America Alone, where he argued demography is destiny. And when you've got falling Western birth rates, you've got to import the population to pay for your NHS in the UK and to keep the economy going and to provide aged care. But you've also got those people you're importing, they tend to be religious people, typically Islamic people whose birth rate is far higher than the local birth rate. So all you need to do to know what the future looks like is just project 50 years into the future, looking at current demographic trends. And the UK, they're the figures we're looking at here specifically, will be a very different looking UK. And so he makes this point, is Europe still Europe, but with different people? Well, of course it's not. It's a completely different kind of country.
Because you're
and so we've
changing
got to decide if that's what we want.
You're changing the culture. And I think the problem here is twofold. One is the cultural malaise that's come out of the Marxism and socialism that has been pushed through the institutions for years and years and years. Because if you really believe that the world and the country you live in is evil and it's a colonialist, capitalist outfit and climate change is coming to get us, etc., why would you want to have a child? You've convinced yourself this is not a world you want to bring a child into.
Can I add something to that, though? It's more than a cultural malaise. It's a spiritual one, because if you reject Christianity and you believe that you came from nothing, and when you die, you end up as nothing. So eat, drink and be merry, because tomorrow there's no point in investing in the future. There's nothing beyond the graves. There's no point trying to create a legacy for the future, because everything ultimately means nothing. So you've got a culture of doom, as you point out, with climate change, etc. But you've also got this nihilistic kind of culture where nothing means anything, nothing's for anything. And with the demise of Christianity, it's no wonder birth rates are falling. Religious people have children.
This is where Islam gets it right? Because they, much like Christianity, teaches children are a blessing. The more you have of them, the bigger the legacy that you're leaving, which is just factually correct. And yet, as we've seen the decline of Christianity in the West, we just built the place, you're welcome, and the rise of Islam in the East and infiltrating the West, it's just a numbers game in which the future is abundantly clear.
The two Western countries that have the highest birth rates are the United States, which is still an overwhelmingly Christian country, and Israel, which is a highly religious country.
Of course. And the other problem is the economic circumstances we've created, because we no longer have economic circumstances in which you are encouraged to have a family, because you can't hold down a traditional family situation of, say, a parent at home and a parent at work, because it's just just not affordable to do that anymore. And John Howard, when he was Prime Minister, made the point, and I'm paraphrasing here, that good economic policy must be good for the people. You know, it's not a means to an ends unless it is helping the people of the country. And so often now, the economic policy we see is based on how can the government make more tax. And of course, making more tax is easy to do when you send everyone off into the workforce. Women must go to work, you must be in the workforce. And in that situation where the cost of childcare keeps going up, which the government just keeps subsidising, so then the costs keep going up and up and up and up again, it becomes more and more difficult to have children, which is great. The little sugar hit the government gets now in terms of the money they make out of it is great. But in 50 years' time, it's a very different equation when they don't have those people left because they haven't been having kids because they've all been going to work.
And that's exactly the point that Douglas Murray makes in The Strange Death of Europe. He says it's actually not the lack of desire for children why this is happening in Western countries. It is the fact that they can't afford children. So what are we doing? Making societies in which people genuinely believe, because too often it's true, we simply can't afford to have another kid or perhaps to have any kids, depending on your circumstance. And I love that you raise that point, because the sooner females, I'm talking to you ladies, wake up to the fact that feminism was always, in my humble opinion, a government scam, because you had half of the world's population you couldn't tax.
Yep.
They weren't going to work for the man. So we have to tell you, oh, this is empowering. Give up the house, give up the happy husband you're looking after and being a homemaker and raising good children, because not only did the government then get to tax both 50%, 50%, 100% now of their populations, but guess what? Now the state gets to raise your children. And we have seen this time and time again. Why do you think that they're pushing so hard now for universal daycare here in Australia? Many states, like Queensland, have recently announced, oh, this is free now, free daycare for all. Woohoo! Women, they are robbing you blind. They just want you to get back to a desk working for someone who doesn't care if you live or die, quite frankly, so that they can raise your children. We talk 24/7 about how the brainwashing of the next generation is rampant throughout our educational sector here in Australia. The sooner they get them, the easier their job is. So if you go back to work, I get your baby, I'm the state, I'm more than happy.
And I've argued before that all the money that we put into childcare subsidies, we should offer directly to families so a parent can stay at home if they want to. It'll never happen because they don't get the economic sugar hit that they want out of it. But if that's what you're trying to encourage, I think that's the way to go.